Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. In today's tutorial, I want to show you some tips and tricks for the new update of Pigments3. Now, before you close this video, these techniques can be used in other synthesizers as long as they have some similarities with Pigments3, like the utility engine, which is basically a sample player, which both Serum and Vital has. So yeah, no excuse unless you really hate Pigments, which is a pity. Anyways, these techniques I'm going to demonstrate using two of the presets of my latest Pigments preset pack, which came out last week. You can check everything following the link down in the description. These techniques I think are best demonstrated in pads or atmospheres, but as everything sound design, that doesn't mean that you can only apply them to make pads or atmospheres. They can be used literally for everything. So yeah, with that said, let's start our tutorial. So the first pad I want to show you is the Evolving Darkness from my pack. I'll turn down the white noise thing, the evolving thing in here, and it sounds like this. So the first technique I want to show you is how to add character to the sound using the utility engine. Now, you've heard how the pad sounds, but check this out. I'll play it again and I'll crank the white noise micro in here and check the character that it's going to add to the sound. See all the movement it added? This is the whole essence of this trick, let's say. Just before we get really into it, what's going on in this patch is we have the first engine is a sample player in here. It's set to granular mode with some random modulation on the density and the size of the grains plus the starting points, and it's being modulated a little bit, ring modulation, with a sine modulator in here being set to -24 semitones or 2 octave lower. So and the start point is being also modulated with the first LFO just to give it some movement. And this sample in here comes from the Pigments3 pack, which is the factory sample pack. So yeah, it sounds like this. It goes to the first filter, the comp filter, which is being modulated with the first comp, which is the second random generator, offset to be unipolar. It gives only positive modulation, if that makes sense, not only positive and negative. So you have this. And then it goes into a formant filter, which is again being modulated by the second random generator, but in here in the bipolar way, not unipolar like with the first one. And the morph is being modulated with the first LFO, just to give it more movement, you know. And the morph is basically the relationship between the peaks and the dips of a formant filter. I've already explained how a formant filter works. You can check that out following the link right in here. Now, this is great. We have movement, but we need more character. So I've added the second engine. Now, the second engine is a wavetable engine that comes from Data's latest wavetable packs. You can again check in following the link down in the description. Now, it's a vowel wavetable. So if I'll turn off the formant filter, it's going to sound like a vowel. And it has some modulation, some FM modulation with a ramp in here. And the modulator is set to -12 semitones. So again, sounds like this. Now, when we give a vowel source like this, when we make it go through a format filter, it's going to give it way more character, way more vocally character, at least for me. So now it sounds like this. It's just these kind of spikes of frequencies or like resonance that they're going, over there. It's just amazing. I really like that. Anyways, so this is the initial patch. Now, what the utility engine is doing. So the utility engine is adding a sub. Nothing too special. I'm going to turn it off, and it's playing 2 samples. Now, here's where things gets really interesting. So I'm going to focus on the second sample first, and then I'll talk about the first one, because each one of them has something special in it. So the second sample, it has a modulation on the volume with the third LFO. Now, this is pretty interesting, and again can be used in any other synthesizer. So I've created this kind of a weird shape by modulating the waveform and the symmetry of the waveform. Now, the symmetry with the first random generator and the waveform with the first LFO. And just remember, the first random generator is a sample and hold. So it's modulating bipolar, because sample and hold in Pigments is bipolar by default. That's why when I've wanted it to modulate the comb filter in here, I've let it go through an offset comb in here and made it only modulate, unipolar. Anyways, back to the subject. So modulating the waveform and the symmetry just the way you like. And then to make it more interesting, I've modulated the rate of the LFO with the second sample and hold in here. So it gave us this. See how the movement it gave to the volume. Now, another interesting thing in here is that I'm playing with the tuning with the first random generator to give it again more movement and more character. And the last thing that I'm doing is that I'm making it move between both filters using the second random generator, which is a binary random generator, meaning it's going to give either zeros or 1 value. So it's either minimum or maximum, no in between. And this, I really love this trick, using a binary modulation source, because, it'll give us bursts of a sound, or like bursts of modulation, if that makes sense. See how the sound and the character changes when it's going comb to format or only format. So this is pretty interesting. Now, the first noise generator in here has, as I said, something pretty special in it, which is the way the volume is being modulated with the random generator in here, the third one. So it's basically giving us, as I said, bursts of sound. Like so. But the third random generator is being controlled by the second comb in here. Now, what's happening in the second comb is that the second envelope is the main modulation source, and it's who's controlling how much the modulation is being applied. But the macro one is controlling whether the second envelope is going to apply its modulation to the third random generator, which is modulating the volume, or not, if that makes sense. So basically, the macro one in here is controlling if this modulation is going to happen or not, if that makes sense. And this, in Pigments, we can achieve it using the multiply modulation. So if I'll take off the macro in here, and I'll turn down the first macro that is, controlling the volume, we're going to get this modulation. Oh, and I need to turn off the amount. But when I'll add the first macro and I'll crank the amount, check this out, the modulation is going to get controlled with this macro in here. So nothing. Now. And yeah, so now let's put everything back together and we will get this. And yeah, these were the first tricks that I wanted to show you, using the multiply to get some extra control, if that makes sense, using the offset and the comb in here, modulating extensively the LFO to give us some weird shapes and movement, and using the utility engine to get more character of the sound, if that makes sense. Now, there's also another thing I want to show you, and for this we need to move on to another preset. Now, this preset is called Organic Origins, and it sounds like this. Okay, so what's going on in here? We have okay, let's turn off everything. We have the harmonic engine in here. We have this modulation thing in here set to shepherd. The position is being modulated with the first random generator. And by the way, the shepherd modulation is a bit fiddly, if that makes sense. And you need to find your sweet spots. So these modulations are basically happening inside, let's say, in the region where I thought, yeah, that's a really cool sweet spot, when the gain is set to 3.9 dB, phi to full, and window size to 5.39. Anyways, never copy the exact values, because I don't think that this is how sound design should be, and yeah, you won't get, let's say, far away doing so. Anyways, in here we have the spectrum A set to bi plus, spectrum B set to signal. We have some section modulation in here with the first LFO, to give some movement to the sound. The morphing is being modulated with the second envelope, again, to give movement to the sound. And the second envelope has its sustain modulated with the second random generator. See where this is going? Just adding movement with every parameter, extensive modulation. And you get this. And everything going through a formant filter, again, frequency being modulated, morphing being modulated, the Q, which is basically the peaks or the resonance of these peaks, these ones, well, it's being also modulated with the second LFO. And the all is going through a low pass 24 dB filter just to control the introduction of the sound, if that makes sense. And here's the third envelope, nothing too special, just long attack, long decay, 3/4 sustain, and nothing is being modulated. Now, we add some character to it using the sample engine in here. So again, it's a sample that I chose from the granular friendly pack that comes with Pigments, nothing too special. No modulation on the density, no modulation on the size, just some modulation on the pitch to give it more character, and some frequency modulation using the sine modulator in here. But here's something really interesting to give it like more character, is that I'm modulating the tuning of the modulator with the first random generator, and I'm modulating the chorus pitch of the second engine with the second random generator. So this will give us this weirdness. Now, to get this gating effect, we have a square LFO in here controlling the volume of the main output of the sample engine, and the frequency of this LFO is being modulated with the first random generator, just to give it some, more gating, if that makes sense. Weird gated results. Isn't that really cool? Now, when we add the utility engine and we do exactly the same thing to it, which means we'll add the LFO3, which is going to modulate the volume of the sample, and the sample is set to AM ring, which sounds like this. And by the way, it's being pitch tracking the keyboard. We get all of these weird, textures going on. Now we take off the artifact macro. We have constant volume, sound, let's say. We set it to 100%, we get this like weird glitchy thing. Now we add everything together and we have this. And here's where things gets the most interesting, and this is where this last trick I want to show you is when I crank this origins macro in here. I see how the character it added to the sound. It's just amazing. And how it did it is by adding the phase shift delay. Now, this feature in Pigments3 is just awesome because it adds so much character to the sound. You can do basically everything with it. So in here, what we're doing, the origin macro is doing is that it took down some of the feedback from the main delay, so it won't get too much effect. And it added some pitch shifting delay, as you can see in here, till 35%. But we already have the time being modulated with the comb in here. And the comb in here is a sum of the first function generator, which is this weird shape, and the first comb, which is an offset, just like with the other patch, an offset making the second random modulator, which is a sample and hold, like so. It's making it unipolar. So here we have only unipolar modulation. So basically what I've done is that I've mixed two signals together, and they're controlling the time of the pitch shifting delay. So the first modulation, the function one, is repeating, and the second one is random. So we'll get some repetitive randomness, if that makes sense. And the all together sounds like just like this. So without anything. And yeah, with these were the tips and tricks I've wanted to show you with Pigments3. As I said, these techniques can be used in any other synthesizer as long as it can it offers maybe a sample player, or maybe it offers some something similar to the comb in here. Again, sound design techniques can be used almost anywhere and not only for atmospheres. So yeah, I really hope you've liked this one. And as usual, if you want to support the channel, you can consider becoming one of my patrons, or you can buy my presets on Gumroad. And yeah, with this is the end of this tutorial. Have a great one.